So this one does have an A value of 1, but it's actually -1. So you could use a pattern 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9, but you have to be going down instead of up. Or you could, like always, modify the pattern. So on this guy, again, we're going to begin graphing this by finding the most important point, the vertex. And the vertex is a coordinate. It's a location on the xy plane. So you need an x value and a y value for your vertex. You find the x value of the vertex using the formula x equals -b over 2 times a. When you use the formula, please use parentheses to plug in your b and a value. And where do you get your b and a value from? From here. This is your a, this is your b, this is your c. And c is not even in the formula, so who cares? But let's plug in the 12 right into there, into the b spot. So we have a 12 right there, and the a value of -1 down here in that parenthesis. So up on top, we have a -12, and on the bottom, we have a -2. So when you think -12 divided by -2, that will give you a +6. And that is the x value of the vertex. X equals 6, right? So the x value of the vertex is 6. Whenever you have an x and you want the y, all you have to do is plug in the x into the original function. Here's the original function. There are my x's. I'm going to replace these x's with parentheses, and then I'm going to plug in the 6 right in there with parentheses. So I'm just going to rewrite this guy. Y equals -x squared plus 12x minus 38. And I put parentheses instead of the x's because I know that x is 6. So I'm going to plug in the x value of 6 right in there. 6 here, 6 there. And I do recommend using a calculator, or be very careful when you do this. You do exponents first. 6 squared is 36. You do the exponent before dealing with the sign in the front. So that's technically a -36. And then you actually multiply 12 times 6. That'll give you 72. So plus 72. And don't forget about that minus 38 at the very end. From left to right, 36 plus 72, or -36 plus 72. That'll be a +36. Then you have +36, take away 38. That'll give you -2 as a final answer. Final answer to what? The final answer to y. Y equals this stuff. There it is. Y equals -2. Now that is the y value of our vertex. So y being -2 goes right there. And now we have the location of that most important point called the vertex. So let's go to that most important point, the 6, -2. So you go 6 on the x-axis, +6 on the x-axis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. -2 on the y-axis, -2. There is the location 6, -2. That is the vertex. Now, you need more points, so you could go to an input-output table, an XY table, or do what I recommend using the pattern 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. Now, you could only use this pattern when a is 1. Now, in this case, the a value is -1, so you could just multiply the outputs by -1. And of course, it becomes -1, -4, and -9. Now, what does that mean? That from the vertex, you're going to go 1 over 1 down, 1 over 1 down, and put a dot there. From the vertex, 2 over 4 down. So 2 over 4 down, 3 over 9 down, 3 over 9 down. But I don't even think we'll be able to fit this last one in there. But if I do go 1 over 1 down, put a dot there, and I go back to the vertex and go 2 over 1, 2, 3, 4 down, put a dot there. And like I said, 3 over 9 down is going to be off the graph. So all I could do is map these 2 dots over to the other side of the axis of symmetry. Okay. So the axis of symmetry is a vertical line passing right through that vertex. And if you map the points over to the other side, that's 1 unit away. So go 1 unit this way, plot it there. The other one is 2 units away, go 2 units this way, plot it there. Hit submit, you'll get full credit on this question. All right, so to graph this one, to graph any parabola, you begin with the most important point to find the vertex. So I always say, step 1, write down the word vertex, write down a coordinate because a vertex is a coordinate, an x and a y value. How do you find that coordinate? You find the x value of the vertex by using the vertex formula, x equals -b over 2 times a. And whenever you use that, please use it with parentheses when you plug in your values, negative parentheses over 2 times parentheses. Then you could identify that your b value is 24, your a value is 2, and the c value you don't really care about because it's not in the formula. So 24 goes into the top parenthesis, and the a value of 2 goes in the bottom parenthesis. So that really gives you a negative 24 divided by positive 4. Negative 24 divided by positive 4 is negative 6. So we just found that x equals negative 6. The x value of your vertex is negative 6. So we have the x value, we need the y value, How do we find the y value? When you have the x value, you simply plug in that x value into the x's of the original quadratic equation, and then that way you could find the y. So I always recommend rewriting the quadratic trinomial equation or the function and replace your x's with parentheses. So I'm going to rewrite it. Y equals 2x squared plus 24x plus 63. And notice that instead of x's, I put parentheses because I already know that x is negative 6. So I'm going to take that negative 6 and plug it into those parentheses. Negative 6 right here and a negative 6 right there. Okay, so I do recommend using a calculator when you have big numbers like these. Negative 6 squared, that's easy. That's positive 36. Then you're going to multiply it by 2, and that does give you 72. Okay, so we have a 72, and then 24 times, 24 times negative 6 will give us a negative 144. I just did this on the calculator. So that gives us a minus 144. And then you bring down the plus 63. And when you go from left to right, 72 take away 144, that ends up being negative 72. Okay, if you type that in a calculator, 72 take away 144, that's negative 72. And then add 63 with the calculator. So that will give you negative 9. So what did we just find here? We found out that y equals negative 9. Y equals negative 9. That is the y value of the vertex. Y equals negative 9. So that negative 9 is going to go right into the y value of the vertex, negative 9. So there's our vertex, negative 6, negative 9. Let's go to the x value of negative 6 and the y value of negative 9. Remember, this is, after all, a location on the xy plane. So let's go to negative 6, negative 9, and that would be right here. So I want to put a dot right there. And you would plot that dot as well. And then you need more points. You could use an input-output table, an XY table, but I don't recommend that. I do recommend using a pattern 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. But that is a pattern for when the a value is 1. And right here, it's clear that the a value is 2. So we need to modify the outputs of the original pattern by that new a value of 2. So I need to multiply the 1 times 2, the 4 times 2, and the 9 times 2. Why? Because the a value is 2, not 1. If the a value were 1, I could just use a pattern 1 over 1 up, 2 over 4 up from the vertex, and 3 over 9 up from the vertex. But because the a value is 2, I need to modify the outputs. The 1, the 4, the 9, I need to modify those by multiplying them by this new a value of 2. So the a value is 2. You're going to have to go times 2, times 2, times 2. So 1 times 2 is 2, 4 times 2 is 8, 9 times 2 is 18. So your new pattern is 1 over 2 up, not 1 over 1 up, it's 1 over 2 up. And now 2 over 8 up from the vertex, and then 3 over 18 up from the vertex. So let's start with this first pattern from the vertex. Let's go 1 over 2 up. So I have my point, I go 1 to the side, and I go 1, 2 up, and I put a dot right there. That's what you're going to do. Then I go back to the vertex, and I want to go 2 over 8 up. Okay, so from the vertex, 2 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 up, and put a dot right there. Then you go back to the vertex, and you would go 3 over 18 up. Now, it depends how many points they want you to plot. Right here it says plot 7, so yeah, we're going to use this last one, 3 over 18 up. So we're going to go 3 to the side, 1, 2, 3, and 18 up. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And then from there, we need more points on the other side because so far we have from the vertex going up this way, we need it on this side. So what we do is imagine that there's an axis of symmetry right here. I'll actually draw a green dotted line right through that vertex and map the points over to the other side. So I have this point that's 1 unit away from the axis of symmetry, so go 1 unit this way, plot that point. I have this other point that's 2 units away from the axis of symmetry, so go 2 units this way, plot that point. And this one is 3 units, 1, 2, 3. So go 1, 2, 3 units. And there's your perfect parabola right here. Of course, if it were on paper, you would actually draw your parabola going right through it, through those points. But on Quizizz, you just type in these 7 points, hit submit, and you'll get full credit. They are asking us to graph this quadratic trinomial equation that's in standard form, and they want us to graph by plotting 5 of the points. So just like any other quadratic equation, if you want to graph it, you start with the most important point, which is known as a vertex. Okay, and what is a vertex? It's really just a coordinate. It's an x value and a y value. And how do you find that x and y value? Well, you start by finding the x value using the formula x equals negative b over 2 times a. And to be safe using this formula, I recommend rewriting it, but with parentheses. Instead of negative b, you put negative parentheses over 2 times a, but instead of a, you put parentheses. Now you could easily identify the a value of 2, the b value of negative 28, and the c value of 97, but 97 is not even in the formula. The c value is not there. We're going to take the b value and plug it in right here where the b is at, which would be on the above parenthesis, and the b value is negative 28. Okay, and the bottom a value is 2. So when you do this math, you have a minus 28. That would be a positive 28 up on top over 2 times 2 on the bottom, which would be 4. So what we really have is 28 divided by 4, which is 7. So what did we just find here? We just found the x value being 7, the x value of the vertex, to be more specific. So the x value of the vertex is 7. So we know that the x value is 7, and we still need the y. So whenever you have an x and you want the y, all you have to do is plug in the x value, in this case of 7, into the x's. So what I would do is simply plug in the x value of 7 into these x's. And how to do that safely would be to rewrite this, but with parentheses. So here I go. Y equals 2x squared minus 28x plus 97. And yes, I wrote parentheses instead of x's because I actually know that x equals 7. So I'm going to plug in the 7 right into those parentheses. So a 7 right there and a 7 right there. So you could type this in exactly the way it is on a calculator, carefully, all right, including the parentheses and everything. Hit equal, and it will give you the y value of your vertex. Or you could work it out the way I'm about to right now, just keeping in mind PEMDAS. Parentheses, you plugged in a 7, there's nothing to do in the parentheses. You move on to e exponents. 7 squared is, 7 times 7 is 49. And you could bring down the 2 and multiply it by 49. 2 times 49 is 98, right? And then you could actually multiply the 28 times 7 with the minus sign in front. So 28 times 7 is 196. I just did that on a calculator right now. And we still have the plus 97 that I'm bringing down. And now it's just a question of adding and subtracting from left to right. So you could actually type it all in on the calculator. 98, take away 196 on the calculator gives me a negative 98. And negative 98 plus 97, that'll give you a negative 1. So your vertex y value is negative 1. Again, we did the work y equals, we got y equals negative 1. So our y value of the vertex is negative 1. That's our y value. So the vertex is the most important point. Let's plot that most important point. And on Quizizz, you're going to have to plot points, a total of 5 in this case. So whenever you hit enter on the screen, it'll plot this point. So we want to plot it at the location 7, -1. 7 on the x, -1 on the y. Put a dot right there, and that's your vertex, okay? That's the most important point. Now you could imagine an axis of symmetry running right through that vertex. It's the vertical line going right through the vertex. If I actually asked you for the equation of the axis of symmetry, you would say x equals the x value of your vertex, x equals 7. But I'm not asking for that. I'm just telling you that there is an axis of symmetry. That way, when you find more points, you could map them over to the other side of the axis of symmetry. So if you need more points, you could go back to a input-output table, an XY table, which I don't really recommend. Okay, an XY table I don't recommend. What I do recommend is to use the pattern 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. Now, that pattern is for when the a value is 1. However, we have a new a value of 2. Okay, so we're going to take this new a value of 2 and multiply the outputs by that new a value of 2. So remember, the original pattern 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9 came from inputs and outputs, and that was when the a value was 1. So when the a value is 2, you got to multiply these outputs, the 1, the 4, and the 9. You got to multiply those by that new a value of 2. So you multiply 1 times 2, and you'll get 2. Multiply 4 times 2, and you'll get 8. Multiply 9 times 2, and you'll get 18. So what does this mean? That you have a new pattern. Instead of 1, 1, it's now 1 over 2 up instead of 1 over 1 up. Instead of 2, 4, 2 over from the vertex, 4 up from there, it would be 2, 8. Instead of 3 over and 9 up, it's 3 over and 18 up. Now we're not going to use the entire pattern, but we are going to use probably these first two. Again, here's our vertex. If the a value were 1, I'd go 1 over 1 up. But the a value is 2, so we got to use a modified pattern of 1 over 2 up, okay? So again, you're going to, from the vertex, go 1 over 1, 2 up and put a dot right there, okay? And then you go back to the vertex, and you're going to go 2 over 8 up. 2 over 8 up. So when I do that, I'm at the vertex 2 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Put a dot right there. And of course, with that axis of symmetry that I drew, that you're not able to draw on Quizizz, but you could imagine it being there, then just map the points over to the other side. What do I mean by that? Well, this point right here, it's 1 unit away from the axis of symmetry, so go 1 unit this way and plot the point right there. This other point is 2 units away, so go 2 units this way and plot the point right there. And that is your parabola. You hit submit, you'll get full credit on the quiz, all right? Of course, if it were on paper, you'd actually draw your parabola going right through these coordinates, put arrows on it. And of course, there are other questions that I could ask you. I could ask you, like, what's the domain? The domain of any parabola is x equals all real numbers. What's the range? In this case, the range would be y is greater than or equal to the y value of -1. I could ask you for the y-intercept. Oh yeah, by the way, that's a good question. If I did ask you for the y-intercept of this parabola, how do you find the y-intercept? You set x equal to 0. So what would the y-intercept be? Where would it cross the y-axis? I mean, you can't see it because here's a y-axis. It's going to cross way up here somewhere. What is the location of where the parabola would cross the y-axis? Anybody? At 97, right? At 0, 97. Because to find the y-intercept of any equation, you set x equal to 0, which would make this whole thing 0, plus 97. So that'd be 0, 97. I'm getting carried away here because I'm not asking for the y-intercept on this question. I just asked how to graph it, and that's how you graph it. By the way, you need to turn in the work of this vertex and maybe the modified pattern. And of course, you submit the points, the coordinates on Quizizz. But if you have the right graph, but you don't even show any work, you're not going to get credit, okay? So make sure you show your work. Same deal. We begin graphing by finding the most important point, the vertex. The vertex is a coordinate. It's an x value and a y value. You find that vertex x value using the formula x equals -b over 2 times a. And when you use it, please use parentheses instead of b and a. That way you could safely plug in your B value of 4, and your A value of 1/3. And obviously the C value of 12 you're not using on the formula. It doesn't have any C values. So let's plug in the B value of 4 and the A value of 1/3. Okay. So this is really, really ugly, but let's go with it. We have on top a -4, and on the bottom we have 2 times 1/3. And I hope we remember that when you multiply a number times a fraction, you could put that number over a 1. That way it looks like a fraction. And when you multiply it with another fraction, you just multiply the top with the top and the bottom with the bottom. So 2 times 1 is 2. You're going to have a 2 up here. And then on the bottom, 1 times 3 is 3. Okay, by the way, you could technically just type in 2 parentheses 1/3 in a calculator and it'll give you your final answer, right? Or you could type in this whole thing in a calculator and it'll give you your final x value of your vertex. But I want to show you without a calculator. So we have we have a -4 divided by 2/3. So what we need to do to really understand this is write it horizontally instead of vertically. -4 divided by 2/3. And I hope we remember back in semester 1, we learned that when you divide by a fraction, it's really the same as multiplying by the reciprocal of the fraction. So you flip the 2/3 and it becomes 3/2. So you could say that you have the -4, you should say you have -4, but instead of division, you're going to put multiplication, and instead of 2/3, you're going to flip 2/3 and make it 3/2. Okay. And then this you could do on a calculator, or you could do it by hand by saying, okay, 4 over 1 times 3 over 2. So -4 times 3 is -12, and 2 times 1 is 2. So your x value is really -6. Again, if you don't want to struggle, you could just type this in, negative, open parenthesis, 4, close parenthesis, the division bar, 2, open parenthesis, 1 over 3, in parenthesis, close, hit enter. It'll give you -6 as an answer. That -6 is your vertex x value. How do you find the y value? You plug it into the original. The original equation says y equals 1/3 x squared plus 4x plus 12. And of course, we are plugging in the x value of -6 into those parentheses. And when you do the exponents first, you get a +36. And of course, you're going to be multiplying that by 1/3. And that's easy to do because if you put that over 1, you could actually do 36 on top divided by 3 on the bottom. That will be a 12, right? Or if you multiplied 1 times 36, it's 36. 3 times 1, it's 3. And 36 over 3, that is 12. Or you could type it in the calculator. Either way, you're going to get 12 for that first number right here. And then you have a +4 times a -6. That's a -24, right? +4 times a -6, -24. And of course, you could bring down that plus 12. So we have a, from left to right, 12 take away 24, that's -12, and -12 plus 12 that comes down, that'll be 0. So our vertex has a y value of 0. So let's plot that point, the location -6, 0. That would be -6, and you don't go up or down, that's right on the x-axis itself, that's -6, 0. Now you need more points. You could use an input-output table, but I recommend using the pattern 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. However, because our a value is 1/3, I'm gonna have to modify the outputs, the 1, the 4, and the 9. I'm gonna have to modify the outputs of the original pattern by that new a value of 1/3. So I'm gonna multiply the 1 by 1/3, and we'll get 1/3. I'm gonna multiply the 4 times 1/3, and we'll get 4/3. And I'm gonna multiply the 9 times 1/3. And on a calculator, 9 times 1/3, that's like 9 divided by 3. That'll be 3. Okay? So this does look ugly. We know the vertex. We need more points. So if I want more points, I could go 1 over and 1/3 of the way up. 1 over 1/3 of the way up. But I can't do that on Quizizz. It'll only go complete units, not 1/3 of a unit. So when you try to get your point and move it over 1 and 1/3 of the way up, it's going to skip right there. So you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to be going back and forth right there. So let's use, and 2 and 4/3, it still won't work. If you go 2 over and 4/3 of the way up, it's still going to not let you plot it there. So go to a nice one like this one, 3 over and 3 up. So that one you could do 3 over and 3 up, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and put a dot right there. and you're good to go. All you got to do now is map it over to the other side of the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry is a line that invisible line that goes right through the vertex, and just map it over to the other side. So if your dot is 1, 2, 3 units away, go 1, 2, 3 units away this way. And that's all it's asking for, 3 points. Those are 3 points. That's our parabola. Of course, if it were on paper, you graph it. Notice that that parabola is a little wider than usual. That's because the a value is closer to 0. The closer it gets to 0, the wider it gets. The bigger it gets, the more narrow it gets, the more vertically stretched. Anyway, I hope this helps.